Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Dead by Daylight chapter review. In today's video, we will be reviewing the new chapter called Descend Beyond. This chapter introduces a new killer called the Blight, and I say new killer, but he's actually been in the game for quite a while. 2 years ago, we had the Hollowed Blight event, which was directly linked to this character, and all the way back when the first tome came out, we also got additional lore for this character. But he hasn't been a playable character up until this point, so it's very exciting to finally be able to play as him. And on top of that, we also have a new survivor and a graphical update, so let's dive straight into it. The Blight is definitely the scariest looking killer yet. However, when it comes to his power, he's not very exciting. I was very disappointed when I found out that he just got another dash ability. His power feels very stale and uninspired, and just in case you don't already know what his power is, I'll give a quick recap. So the Blight starts the trial with 5 rush tokens, which replenish over time if they are used. The Blight can use 1 rush token to run quickly for a short time. Once his run is over, he suffers long fatigue. However, if you bump into an obstacle while running, you will be able to consume another rush token and continue running. And you have to bump into an obstacle at least 1 time before you can perform an attack during a rush. People are calling him the pinball as a joke, and I think that's a very funny way to summarize it. But yeah, that's basically how his power works. Not everything about this killer is bad, though. He has very unique counterplay, which makes him very fun to play against. And I also think he has a very high skill cap, so if you master him, you'll definitely be able to show for it. And a lot of people think he is a weak killer, but I disagree. He has good map pressure and more options in a chase, which is the recipe for a very good killer. And so, for this reason, I think he's going to be, at the very least, a mediocre killer. He might turn out to be solid, he might turn out to be top tier, but I know he's going to at least be mediocre. But yeah, that pretty much sums up all my thoughts on the Blight. Now let's take a look at the Blight's teachable perks. His first perk is Dragon's Grip. After kicking a generator for the next 30 seconds, the first survivor that interacts with it will scream, revealing their location for 4 seconds and becoming afflicted with the exposed status effect for 60 seconds. And it has a cooldown of 80 seconds. This perk seems very powerful, which is a good thing. At first glance, it seems overpowered, but it's kind of niche. It doesn't activate as often as you think it would. Not to suggest that it's bad. This perk was very well made. Let's move on to the next perk, which is Hex Blood Favor. A hex that gains the favor of the entity when blood is spilt. When a survivor is hit with a basic attack, all pallets within a radius of 16 meters of your location are held in place by the entity for 15 seconds and cannot be pulled down by survivors. Hex Blood Favor has a cooldown of 40 seconds. This perk is also really powerful, and once again, it seems overpowered at first glance, but it has a cooldown, and this is only gonna 16 meters in this game isn't that big. It's probably only gonna block 1 or 2 pallets, which is still good enough to make a big difference, but it's not as overpowered as people think it is. Finally, we have Hex Undying, a hex which maintains the vile powers that flow throughout the trial. While Hex Undying is active, survivors within 2 meters of any totem will have their aura revealed for 6 seconds. When another hex totem is cleansed, that hex transfers to an available dull totem. Sorry, stuttered a bit there. losing any tokens in the process. So basically, if let's say you bring Hex Ruin and someone cleanses it and you have this perk, it'll transfer to another totem and they have to cleanse it again. However, let's say if you have Devour Hope, and you have this perk, and your Devour Hope like respawns, it won't keep 4 stacks. It'll return back to 0 stacks, and you're gonna have to start hooking people again. So this perk again is really powerful. I'm really glad they're adding in a lot of really good perks, because usually they introduce 6 perks and maybe 1 or 2 of them become meta. This time all 3 of the perks look like they could become very meta. The only thing I don't like about this perk is the way it kind of like completely overpowers Hex Thrill the Hunt. Maybe what you could do is make it so that survivors' auras will only be revealed if they're near a totem and in a chase. That way Hex Thrill the Hunt still has some use. I honestly think being able to respawn Hex Totems is powerful enough on its own. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Blight's perks. The new survivor is Felix Richter. I probably mispronounced that, kind of like how I said Cheryl instead of Cheryl in my previous chapter review, and how I probably mispronounced Zarina's name in the review before that. But you know what? We're not going to talk about that. So, Felix comes with 3 perks. The first one is Visionary, which reveals the auras of all generators within 32 meters of your location. This perk is good for beginners, but for veterans, it's such a waste of a perk slot. It's a pretty bad perk. Plus, it has a short cooldown when a generator is completed, so it's really not worth it. I mean, maybe it'd be useful on indoor maps, but that's really niche. So yeah, it's a bad perk. Luckily, his other 2 perks are pretty good, so let's talk about those perks instead. His second perk is Survivor Thanatophobia. So for every injured, hooked, or dying survivor, his healing and unhooking speeds are increased by 14%, which is a pretty big deal. This perk can be a lot better than Botany Knowledge in certain situations, or in at other times it can just be a small effect. But nevertheless, this is a very decent perk. And his final perk is Built to Last. So once you completely use up an item, after 10 seconds, that item will recharge 50% of its 50% of its charges. After you completely use up an item, after 10 seconds, it will replenish 50% of its charges. And I think people don't give this perk as much credit as it deserves. I mean, imagine how useful 1.5 of a medkit would be. Imagine how much you could bully the killer with 1.5 flashlights. Imagine how powerful 1.5 of a toolbox would be. You know what I'm saying? So, overall, except for Visionary, 5 out of the 6 perks in this chapter are very good, and that's good. I don't think the Survivor perks are as good as the Killer perks, but I still think they're very good, and I'm happy to see a chapter where almost all of the perks have a chance at becoming meta. Finally, let's talk about the new graphical update. The maps that got reworked now have breakable walls. They look much more scary and immersive. The generator animations look fantastic. They look really good. Same with the pallet breaking animation. And searching a chest actually makes sense now. Instead of waving your hand around and magically making an item appear, now you have to pick the lock off of a chest, which makes a lot more sense. And overall, I think this is a very good change that is going to have a very big impact on the game. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the new chapter. Let me know what you guys think of it in the comment section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.